Welcome to a new episode in our series Enigma Astrology with a very special guest from Lisbon, Portugal, not for the first time. Welcome, Luis Ribeiro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And the first thing, as always, is the copyright on our homepage, which will be in the description box. Copyright. I only have the right to publish the conversation uncut and unedited on freely accessible video platforms, no paywalls, and on my homepages, our guest has the right to shorten, edit, or add as he wishes, and to publish the MP4 content, which I will send him via Swiss transfer on his websites and video platforms on Facebook according to his liking. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay. Um, the first thing I want to show our viewers is how they find our previous talks. And we go to this channel and we search for Luis. And there he is. Okay. We have a playlist. If you click there, and the first talk is this one. That was 2.5 hours, and the second one about we talked shortly after the conference
Mhm.
about the Astra conference in 2023, and here is his companion Elena Avila, which I did an interview in 2020, which is unfortunately no longer with us, and there is a travel report in German with Günther Östmann, and there's a lot of other things here about our guests. So. We start today with talking about Jesuit astrology.
Mhm.
Okay, this is a rather voluminous edition.
Yes.
For the people in Hanover, you can lend it from the Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz Bibliothek, where I got it. And it's from 2023, so it took about 2 or 3 years after the PhD finals, the rigorosum, and then the publication. It's a rather long book. Now, tell us how you got the idea, or who got the idea, and why you did dive into such a large work
Mhm.
project. It's not the easiest sort of PhD I have seen in my life. There are
Yeah.
easier ways to get a PhD than what you did. And Philip, probably the best question is, who should read it and why?
Well, let's start with the idea,
Yeah,
and
okay.
then and then I'll follow. Okay, so uh, very early on in the early 2000s, Elena and I researched, what were the the astrological practices here in Portugal, and we found a lot of material by the Jesuits. And we had some copies at the time. There were still microfilms of some of the works. So we were aware that these materials existed. It is about the same time we found the materials that Elena did her PhD on. So we were researching that kind of material. I was not very interested in Jesuit astrology because it is very regulated by church law, and that limits the practice a little bit. But I knew the materials. I've seen the materials, and then when I finished my MA, my professor Enrique Leitão, who was going to be my supervisor, was my supervisor in the PhD, suggested, why don't you take those Jesuit materials of astrology and write about them, because there's only one paper about that, very short one.
Why was he interested in that
Well, he
field?
had he had wrote he's interested in history of science, and he has studied the Jesuits and the scientific practices of the Jesuits quite extensively. And he
So
had
he
wrote,
thought, I don't want to do the hard work. I give somebody a PhD and he can do the hard work and I get all my information, which I should accomplish myself otherwise.
well, not exactly. He had done a paper. He had done the only paper that delve into that in more detail. There were a couple of references in other works, but what he said to me is, you have the skills, you understand the materials, you can interpret them well. So why not do it? Because no one had done it, and for a PhD, you should work on something that is new and unpublished. So there I was. It wouldn't be my first choice, but it became very interesting and rewarding subject, as you can see by the length of the book.
Yes, yes. Any ups and downs during the process?
Well, not really. There was a lot of transcription, reading a lot of those because I wanted to read all the various compendiums that they had written. COVID did hit, so I couldn't visit the archives in Rome, the Jesuit archives in Rome, to investigate further. But I had enough material to write the PhD, and as you said, it
Okay.
was quite a long one.
So why should anybody or who specifically read it?
Well, it is an academic book, so it's not it's not exactly light reading. The weight of the book in itself wouldn't be light, but any academic that is interested in the history of astrology, because that's a very important part in the history of astrology. The Jesuits are at the end of the timeline, for traditional astrology, before astrology sort of falls out of disrepute. So it's interesting to see their perspective. So it's interesting for historians of astrology. It's interesting for historians of the Jesuits. There's a lot. There's a whole branch of people researching the history of the Jesuits, and this is unique in their practice. So quite interesting as well, all the exchanges in which they use astrology. Um, and also research of the early modern period would be interested in this kind of material.
Okay, so let's go to the next chapter of today's talk. We have this special site, and I want to come to the Astra Conference 2023.
Mhm.
And if you click on this link, you get the talks.
Yep.
And if you go down here, you see the publication of the conference 3 years later.
Mhm.
It's not as thick as your PhD, but it's not small as well. It's edited by Luis Campos Ribeiro and Charles Burnett, the Grand Seigneur of the History of Astrology, Astrologers at Work, Essays on the Practices and Techniques of Astrology in memory of Elena Avila. It's part of the Elena Avila seminar, right?
No, not exactly.
Not exactly, okay.
No, no, no. That is the result of the conference
Okay.
of the conference in
But the
Batalha.
conference was in memory of.
Yes, yes.
And now the first question, there are articles, theses in this book which were not presented at the conference. Can you
Mhm.
talk about that?
Okay, so we did invite every participant to write a paper on a topic. Some of them couldn't at the time, and with academic work, sometimes when you present a paper at a conference, you sort of already have it as a chapter of something else, or you're publishing it. So a lot of the things changed, and it's normal. So the book doesn't reflect exactly what was talked about in the conference, because some of the lectures have changed. Others are developments, because in the course of 3 years, you research a little bit more, you find new things, and you get more data. But the purpose there, and there are other people who were invited later on, or join later on, like Sue Ward. And
Yes, Suvard's title, which is not on the playlist of the conference because she wasn't there giving
yeah.
a talk. Her paper is The Private Workings of a Very Public Astrologer, William Lilly, 1602, 1681. It's on page 490. And Stephen van den Broeke did not publish his talk.
Hmm.
Instead, he published The Changing Meaning of Astrological Elections, Ficino and the Astrologers. And Daryl Rutkin, who did not present the paper, is in this conference book
Yeah.
by Brill, and his title was Marsilio Ficino's Early Astrological Practices, 1469, 1489, a preliminary survey. These are the three, and one speaker didn't present anything in the book. That is from Sweden, I believe. That's
Yeah, Martin Ganston.
Martin
Yeah.
Gunston. Okay, so talk about the book in a whole and why should anybody read it?
Well, again, it's an academic book, so it's interested in people who are interested in more research of astrology. Um, what we tried to do in the conference and then in the book was to present various facets of astrological practice, through time and through different geographies. So we have Arabic, we have Japanese, we have European, we have several periods from the antiquity to early modern periods. So the idea was really to show, how astrology is practiced and structured. And uh, in a sense, that's studying not only the practices, but also the theoretical framework of the techniques that are applied in this practice. So that's why we have a paper on the Almuten and the calculation of the Almuten in medieval European astrology by David Just. You have mine, which discusses the system of scoring as accidental and essential dignities, which comes on later on to European astrology. So these are very technical subjects, and most of their history is presented for the first time in this book. So if you're really wanting to understand where these techniques come from, how do they appear, this is going to be the book for you to read.
Okay, and now we come to the third chapter of today, which is the Astra project. Now let me start where I find the homepage of the Astra project.
Mhm.
Facebook, we come back to your Facebook later. Homepage Astra. The Astra project. This looks like this, I think.
Yeah.
What is this?
Well, the Astra project is the project that Elena and I created in 2018, which is supposed to gather academics in order to study the techniques of astrology. So instead of just studying the social aspects of astrology, which is the majority of the research we've done so far, as has been done, we are focused on practices and techniques, as the book also focus. The Astro project has been a bit, slow in the last few years because I've been busy with other things. And
And you lost a lot of people, didn't you?
what you mean?
Well,
Oh, of the
if you go to the team,
yes, yes, yeah. A lot of these
you find
academics.
people which Levente Laszlo is probably no longer a research team member, and Marta as well, and Eunice and Caroline. Are they still on the team or have they gone to other
Yes,
places?
yes, they are still on the team. This is an informal project, so it's not a problem.
Oh,
And
okay.
we also lost some associates, which moved on, and also the advisors. Some of them have passed on,
Yeah, you
like
lost Shlomo Sela. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Shlomo Sela, Jose Shabazz.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they're still there.
yeah.
Okay, and you have not only this project on this homepage in the University of Lisbon, it's part of your institutional grounding in the university, but you have also um, the
Mm.
YouTube channel, which I'm
Yes.
looking for. Let me see where the YouTube channel is. The Astra project. No, that's not this one. We come back to your academy later.
Hmm.
You see, there's a lot of information about our guest, and that makes it difficult for me if I'm looking for something specific. Astra
There,
project, first
there it is.
episode. Okay, and now we can show this. Oh, Jesus Christ! And
YouTube ads are always annoying.
this is the Astra project on YouTube. So, what's the difference between the Astra project in the Lisbon University in comparison to the YouTube channel, the Astra Project?
Well, the YouTube channel is one of the public outputs of the Astra project, really. Because speaking of astrology nowadays, even in academic manner, is a bit strange, and it's very difficult to do public outputs. The idea we had was to do interviews with researchers, so we have an updated research if people know who's working on what topic and what has been published.
You're close to 100 videos, right?
Yes, there's 60 something videos. I haven't done it in a while again because I have other things that have been happening with my research. I do intend to continue at some point with some new interviews, but that
Okay.
is dependent on the time. Well, there's 60 something videos.
And there is some in here they have you in this context you have the Helena Avila seminar. What is
Hmm.
that? Let me see whether I find that.
Yeah.
I saw it before. This is Helena Avila and Luis Ribeiro
Mm.
podcast. Yeah.
That's the
No, this is not
astrology
this one.
podcast. Yeah.
What is the Helena Avila
Well,
seminar in YouTube? That's something special on YouTube, right?
yes, exactly. It's also in the it's in the our center's YouTube. We had a seminar on ancient astronomy that existed on the
Here it is.
on our institute, which was organized by my colleagues. And when Elena passed away, um, they decided to name the seminar after Helena and extended also not only to astronomy but to cosmology and astrology as well. So we've been having subjects from one topic or another. There are a new batch of videos coming in from the last year that should be uploaded soon. So we have several academics coming and lecturing for about an hour on astrological, astronomical, mathematical subjects related
Okay.
to pre-modern practices. So that's it. That's a more academic branch.
So there's another project in the Astra project, a sub-project, let's put it this way,
Yeah.
and it has something to do with William Lilly. For the German viewers, there are books on Astronova in German, the Christian Astrology, die christliche Astrologie of William Lilly. You have the link here. Let me see whether that works. Yes, it does still work. You can still buy those books in Tübingen by Reinhard Stiele. And there is an English version of the Christian Astrology you can buy on the internet. But these three books are part of a project, the William Lilly Project. And this is
Mhm.
part of the Astra project.
Yes.
And in the 90s, you came about the Regulus edition of Christian astrology, but that didn't hook you in too much, but you were interested. Then later you met Sue Ward and got educated by her, and your partner got educated in your Aura
Mhm.
course. And then somehow, someday, some karma exploded, and you had a new project. How did that come about?
Well, ideas for projects are frequent. Unfortunately, time to do them, it's another thing. Well,
Well, for the viewers,
mhm.
this is one. It's
Yes,
it's more than 1,000 pages. It's three books now, and the book edition is complete. There will be no further books, but
yes.
there is still something going on. So start from the beginning. How did this
Okay.
idea start?
Well, those books are the work of Sue Ward. She has been researching Lilly for quite a number of years, and she's one of the few uh, researchers, astrologers, researchers that early on went to the Bodleian Library to look for Lilly's materials because the Bodleian holds almost all of what remained of Lilly's notes and workbooks. So Seward had worked on some of that. She had some of the material. I sort of encouraged her to write about it and publish them because I think this is a very valuable material,
So you were
especially
not
reagent.
involved in these three books.
No, no, no. Those books, I only wrote the preface to one of them, but
That's a
those were
lot. That's a lot of work she did, more than 1,000
yes,
pages.
yes, 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 incredible and very fast. Taking into account the work that she had to in translating all those materials and tables. So what happened is she started that work with the material she had, and then I went to the Bodleian Library and got the remaining material. So we got a copy of all of Lily's workbooks and some extra material that was there. So with some of that material, Sue did the paper for the conference book, The Astrologers at Work. She did these books, these 3 volumes, which are extremely valuable because they present material about Lily that it wasn't public and most people didn't know it existed. And then from these stemmed the idea that perhaps the workbooks of Lily should be studied in detail. And so what's happening now is that Sue Ward is heading this project because she's the expert and she knows his practice well.
You say she is having this project. Is the project part of her English domicile or is the project in the University of Lisbon?
Well, technically, it's in the University of Lisbon, like the Astra project, but it's in an independent project. It's not connected directly to any financing
Are
so
you
far.
the boss of Subord in that context?
No, we're collaborating.
Okay.
I'm no one's boss. Um, so she's now going through all the workbooks, which are thousands and thousands of charts he did daily, and we're creating a database with all the data available from those consultations, and also a lot of material, a very interesting material has come up with that because we have continuous practices, for years. It's not complete. There are lackings. There are some years that are missing for some reason. And I think Sue discusses that in her book, in one of her volumes. But we can see the practice. We know how much he charged for each person, which type of person was there, the types of questions that come up, um, how many charts he did per day, how did that vary, the time of the day he was working, and we're just pulling a thread, and then information starts pouring from those materials. And this is something very valuable because it's very rare that we have this amount of material for an astrologer, because usually we have fragments of information, and here we have a lot of information. Why no one has studied this before, it still amazes me, because people have known for decades and decades that this material existed, and no one ever decided to do something about it. And it keeps, giving information. Every month we have new information, new data, new people that suddenly, important historical known people that consulted Lily. Sometimes we have their questions, sometimes we don't, but it's interesting, and we hope that at some point in the near future we'll have a database that people can consult with all this information, and then from there people can research further.
Considering my experience in the German contexts of astrological organizations, when you drop dead or got run over by a bus and Sue Ward dies of something else, what happens to the
Happy
leg?
thoughts.
What happens to this material? What happens to the website? How do you organize or make sure? Do you organize a trust who is making sure that this is available in 50 years from now? Or do you say, okay, we do it now, and if nobody continues, that's fine with us? How do you approach this problem? Which is a
Well,
problem, as you know.
it is a huge problem, and because I've worked in other projects which are not astrologically related, and that's a problem
Yes, it's always a
because,
problem, yeah.
yeah,
And we have a
bec-
second problem. It's digital,
mm,
and if somebody switches out, then the digital is gone. So it's
yeah,
the three books are there. That's very good. But that's another problem. We don't discuss that. But how do you at the moment think about what possibilities do we have? Because the university might say when your professor dies, you are gone to what is good. Astrology, nobody wants to get rid of it. Something
Yeah,
like that could happen.
yeah, yeah. It has happened before.
Yeah.
That's the problem with all research projects nowadays.
Yes.
If it's
Yes.
not on paper and in a library somewhere, it's very difficult to preserve digital databases. And then there's all this uh, impulse and encouragement for people to create databases and digital humanities, but there are no, and the European Union does that a lot in projects. If you don't have a digital output, your project is not going to get funded. But then there is no way to uphold that, to maintain that digital support.
Well, there is if you establish a trust, Stiftung in German,
Yeah.
and somebody puts 5 million euros into it, then it's
That-
secure.
yeah, you can, but the problem
Then
is
it then
getting
it then
someone.
it then it is secure, and you could ask the money from the horrible European Union, which should be abolished better today than tomorrow. But that's another story.
Yeah.
Mm,
Usually the
we,
best thing is to get a library to preserve it.
oh, do you
Uh,
do you have that?
you have that.
No, you do you have it
No, I
yet?
don't. I don't. Not at this time. But once
Okay,
the database is big enough and large enough and importantly enough, we might negotiate, with
oh,
some of the
okay,
libraries and see if they're interested. And I would
okay.
think, the Bodleian Library might be interested in
Yes, yes,
hosting this material
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
because it's their material, so they might want to have that database available, and they have the resources to keep it.
Oh, they have the money. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, which we don't. Of course, there's always a problem with databases, which is legacy software. These things are built on software and sometimes code, and this
Yeah,
code needs to be updated. Otherwise, it will
and
stop
someday
working.
nobody can read it anymore, and the
Exactly.
hardware is no.
Yeah.
Okay, we had Suvord on our channel. The first one is this one, my first interview, Suvord, how Lilly found me,
Hmm.
and then we have the second. Suvord talks about her course, her Aurora Astrology. So you find this on this um, on this channel, one of the earlier channels. Okay, now we go back to our talk site. Okay, Heavenly Spheres. It's still available on Amazon.
Hmm.
You did intend to update it, but you still haven't done it. How is the project going to have a second edition? You had so other things to do, so it's still lying around and wants to be updated, right?
Well, there's a lot of notes on where to update it and what to update, but
Yes.
the problem is always
Yeah.
time, getting
Yeah.
time to do it.
Yes. Yes.
And probably at some point a new revised edition should come up.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll see.
How about
Nothing that changes the book dramatically.
yes, yes.
But some minor updates on concepts and new additions, I would think. Yeah,
Okay, you were busy in other areas, and that is this one. You have been busy on naval
yeah,
astrology.
yeah.
What is that project? Where did that
Well,
come from?
I was a researcher when the project that ended a year, 2 years ago, which was about rudders, so in navigation instructions and the scientific knowledge contained in navigational instructions of the early nautical expansion. And I proposed to discuss, what's the use of astrology. So when people start sailing across the ocean and doing these very long journeys which were new, is astrology involved? And this paper I wrote is the first that I'm aware that approaches how astrology was being used for these nautical journeys, and how much of it was used and in what forms, for navigation, for people consulting about their loved ones, etc. I have a project on, so I'm still working on that material for my academic research projects, which will expand on that, and probably that will be a book at some point.
Did you get a grant for the project?
Oh, I have a grant.
For
Uh,
that,
yeah, I
specifically for this naval aspect.
not specifically for this one, but
What's the
for this
grant?
kind of study.
What's the grant for?
The grant for is to study how the cosmological shifts of the 17th century affected astrological practices.
And that started when?
Well, that started with Copernicus, if we want to
No,
get
I
a
mean, I
timeline.
mean,
Oh,
when
my
the
project 2 years
project
ago. 2 years ago.
and running how long?
It's running for 6 years now. Yeah, so
So you were lucky. You got a foot in funded
yeah,
research in the University of Lisbon. We talked about last time, it was a couple
yeah,
of
yeah.
years ago. So now you are, for 4 years, you will have bread and butter every day because the state is funding that project.
Yes.
Is there a follow-up project where you already apply for?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet. Okay.
will at some point in the
Yeah, okay.
future, but it's still early.
So
I still have 4 years to
let me
go.
know when the book is available, then we can do the fourth podcast with you about your
Yeah,
work.
sure, sure.
But there's something else on your on in your life, I suppose. The Academy of Astrological Studies.
Hmm.
That is an interesting development. When we first talked, you had a lot of English content on your academy and courses and all that. How much time of your life today is took up by your being the headmaster of the Academy of Traditional Astrology in Lisbon, especially for Portuguese students, but something is also available for English-speaking people. How is the situation as a headmaster?
Yeah, well, the academy is still going on. It's going to announce courses soon. Um, uh, I'm I'm partial, because I would say that I'm two-thirds in the academic world, and the remaining time of my free time is going to go for.
How much free time do you have?
Well, I sort of manage it. So it
It
varies a little
sounds like
bit.
an 80-hour week.
Yeah, it sort of is. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm currently on a whole month of vacations, because I
Y-
need to stop at some point, then.
Yes, and you have been outside of Portugal. You have been in Turkey. When
Mhm.
was that?
That was in April, late end of April, beginning of May, this year. Yeah.
And people can look it up on your Facebook account. So you went to Istanbul for a conference. It was an international conference, and you were a speaker. Were you a keynote speaker or normal speaker?
What was I? I wasn't the keynote speaker. I was
Oh,
an
okay.
invited speaker.
Invited speaker. So
Yeah.
what was the conference about? Who was there? How many people were there? What was the conference program? What were the topics, as
Well,
far as you remember it?
yeah, so far as I remember, because there've been so many. But well, it was organized by the Sophia Center and the Yediz Technical University in Turkey.
But you mean the
So
Sophia Center in England?
yes,
It was organized
by them
by
and the university.
Nick Campion and his
Yes, yeah,
companions,
Nick Campion's
and
group.
they decided we don't like England, we go to Turkey.
Well, they had a partnership with the Yediz Technical University in Istanbul. So the university was the host for the event.
So it wasn't a conference by this famous Turkish astrologer. It was an academic conference.
It was an academic conference, yes.
How about this famous, I can't remember his name, Ödi or the Öni or something, this famous school headmaster in Turkey who has a large astrological school. Was he
Mm,
there?
yeah.
Did you meet him?
I don't think he was there. If he was,
Okay,
I
so it
didn't.
was really an English Sophia Center and University of
Yeah,
Turkey's academic conference for how
it
many
was an
days?
academic
Two
conference.
days or 3 days?
It was 3 days,
3 days,
if I
okay.
remember correctly.
So there will be a publication of this.
There will be a publication, yes.
So how
Yes.
about the content? Who spoke and who was impressing you and what was interesting?
Well, you had several people there talking on a number of subjects within cosmology. It was quite diverse. You had the ones that I remember the most is the group by Peter Schmidl, which is an ERC, a big ERC project, and they're studying
What is ERT?
esotericism.
What is that ERT?
ERC, European
Oh,
Research
center.
Center. So they are the ones that finance big projects, big academic projects,
Okay.
and she and other scholars got a huge grant, a synergy grant, which means that several universities are involved in this project, which is going to study esotericism in the Arabic
Oh, okay.
context. And they
Interesting.
presented very interesting lectures. All the team was there, at least some of them. I don't know the whole team, but they presented very interesting topics, and the idea was to sort of bridge between uh, uh, Arabic and European, and Turkey being that kind of bridge between Europe and the
Yes.
East. So most of the topics were surrounding that kind of idea.
What else?
What else was there? I don't remember the whole program,
No,
of
it's okay.
course.
Just think about it, during your thinking, I'm going to your Facebook account
Yeah, I
because
talked also about I'm working with some in Persian materials with a colleague from Berlin, who's at the Max Planck. So we presented together two conferences that were joined on the astrological and astronomical practices uh, uh, of the Persian of a Persian astronomer. So it was quite an interesting topic. Yeah, and then here you're seeing and then there was a tour. We had the conference, and then they had organized a tour, a 5-day tour over Turkey. And of course, I had never visited these sites, so I took the
you went
opportunity.
to Göbekli Tepe and other places, right?
Yes,
This is Haran, I believe.
that is Haran. Those are the ruins of Haran.
Uh,
Yeah.
The Sabians of Haran, there is new research that the Sabians of Haran were lively 60 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, the city of Haran is located. And they had another name before they became the Sabians. They became the Sabians because of the Islamic takeover of the country. And they were protected by the Quran if they call themselves a religious group which was mentioned in the Quran, that is Sabians. And there's research on their function. And it seems to be the case that the Sabians of Haran preserved the astrological knowledge, translated it and into Persia, and a lot of this material ended up in Baghdad.
Mm,
Al-Kindi was a Sabian of Haran, for example.
mhm.
So, do you know anything about this story of the Sabians, or is this just a tour you looked at the buildings and that was it?
Well, that was basically it. The
So this was
Sabian.
never a topic of yourself.
No, no, not really. We went to several places here. Was more a touristic, let's say, touristic cultural tour more than anything academic.
Yes, yes.
And it was interesting to be in these places and and see the cultural mixes that Turkey has
But
with
you
other.
didn't dig into the problem how old these places are. The Göbekli Tepe archaeological site is 12,000 years old.
Yeah.
Did the guide dive into that cultural problem?
They talked about it, yes. They did talk about, what is known and what's the latest knowledge we have on those sites, but nothing too deep.
So it was more of touristic problem
It was more a
to get
tourist.
relaxed and
Exactly.
not do too much intellectual
Yeah,
in the brain.
yeah. We were not there to do that.
Yeah, okay.
One of my favorites was Nemrut Dag, which is on the top of a mountain. It's an old site, and we managed to get special permission to see the famous lion horoscope
Oh, okay.
because one of the plaques there, it's an horoscope shaped out like a lion. It's very well known. Um, and it was interesting to see that live.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So today's life in Lisbon, two-thirds research with this grant. Who gave the money for your project? The Portuguese government?
the Portuguese government, yes.
So the next step will be you go into the European context and get 10 times as much money for your next project.
That
So
would be nice.
that would be
Yes.
nice.
That
Okay.
would be nice because then you could form a team, you know.
Yes, yes,
This is an individual project, of course, but then with that kind of money and that kind of project, you can make a team
yes.
and you can get, good researchers to really create something new and interesting. Yeah.
Aside from your research project and aside from your headmaster function in the Academy of Astrology in Lisbon, what else is it you are doing professionally?
Professionally, that's it. That's
That's
that.
it.
That's already enough.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
It's already enough, yeah.
Okay, now let's see whether you want to do something you don't have to do. At
Mm.
the end of this talk site, I put 21 questions, and if you want to, we could start discussing them. The first question would be, well, first of all, are you in the mood to discuss some theoretical, dull
Why
projects?
not?
Okay, because now the most viewers will leave us now.
Yeah.
So I make this larger.
Mhm.
It doesn't work larger. Okay, I have to read it. You have described astrology as an unresolved anomaly for the modern worldview. What, in your view, prevents contemporary academia from engaging with it as a legitimate philosophical question rather than dismissing it as a settled issue?
Okay, that's a long one. Well, the thing is, trying to summarize it. Astrology, as several other things, represent what has been called the wretched sciences. Sciences of the old world, of the pre-modern world that didn't survive the transition into the new world view, and which are nowadays considered pseudosciences, and that pseudoscience attributions something that can also get us into a very large discussion on what a pseudoscience is and what science is. But the fact is that astrology is not accepted as valid knowledge. Let's not even call it a science. It's valid knowledge for today. It is it's firmly ingrained in our scientific worldview that planetary influence in whatever shape and size and color does not exist. It's not there. So it cannot interfere with human events or any other kind of events. Um, and This is the main belief. There's no validity for it. So science does not engage it, and academia does not engage it as a contemporary topic. You can only engage it as an historical topic, as I do. To be validated by academia, you have to study it in a context where it was believed that astrology worked. And this has affected how astrology is seen, even in academia and even when it's being studied as an historical subject. And for a mysterious reason, which might be mysterious or not, it depends how you see it, astrology seems to push all the wrong buttons every time you discuss it. You can discuss alchemy, and Elena used to say you can discuss cannibalism, you can discuss any kind of human things that we wouldn't believe in or we wouldn't give any credit to, and they do not trigger an emotional response. If you talk about astrology, you're going to have people get triggered because,
They are getting on fire.
yeah,
Yeah.
even if you're discussing it purely as an historical topic and in academic means, I discuss astrology as an historical practice. I'm not discussing contemporary practices, of course, unless I'm establishing a link between what was done then and what is done today.
Well, you
But
have your school for that.
exactly, that's for a whole chapter, whole other a whole other department for that,
Yeah, yeah.
and which I don't mix the two ever. But I think that's the problem, But the fact is, astrology was never disproven as well. It was never proven, that's a fact, but it was never disproven. So this idea, oh, astrology doesn't work, science has proven that it doesn't work. No, it hasn't. That's a fallacy that many people talk, and also most people that engaged in proving that astrology doesn't work don't really understand astrology. So most of these scientific tests that they claim to have and that disprove astrology are absolutely pathetic in terms of what astrology is, and it only proves that whoever has done those tests doesn't really know what astrology is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question number two. Your work challenges the Cartesian separation between mind and cosmos. What kind of epistemology would be required for astrology to become intellectually conceivable within contemporary scholarship?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I know how to answer it.
Well, we can skip it. We can always skip it.
Yeah.
Should we
Well,
skip it?
no, I can say a few words. The thing is, how do you conceive valid knowledge? Going back to the first question, how do you validate a knowledge? And this
Yeah,
has been a problem for many other things. For example, homeopathy, which has been practiced, and in German it's very commonly accepted, has been challenged several times, and it's continuously being challenged as valid as acupuncture or any alternative to medicine. Of course, there's a lot of things that need regulation and need to be properly used, but that doesn't mean that there's no validity in it, and I think science, with that Cartesian kind of thought, has dismissed a lot of things that it probably should have looked a little bit further.
okay.
Mm.
Question number three. Do you see astrology as evidence for an enchanted cosmos, or rather as an invitation to rethink the assumptions underlying modern scientific materialism?
Hmm. Yeah, you were inspired when you when you did. Well, the idea of the enchanted cosmos, I understand where that comes from, but I
Well, I'm
think,
a Neoplatonist. I have to ask
yeah,
things like that.
yeah. I think it does it has a lot to do with how you see the cosmos, and you can see it as a sort of enchantment thing, or you can see it as some sort of geometry that seems to be inherent to the cosmos and produce certain effects, or certain effects are connected with the regular geometry of how things move and interact with each other. So you can see it also without the enchantment in it, um, and you still would have to assess the materialism as well, Yeah, and I think the problem with the scientific materialism here is it might shorten our sight and might not allow us to see things
Yeah,
which are there, that are
yeah,
valid and are beyond our understanding. And I think that's the main problem with scientific materialism. And of course, we do have an unenchanted world, a disenchanted world. I think that's the word
yeah,
nowadays, which then gives rise to a flourish of random enchantments that most of the time are completely wild and don't follow any rules and are and some of them are nonsense, and then you have an opposite reaction to this lack of magic and
Yeah.
magical thought. Yeah.
Question number 4. These questions were originally formulated for Richard Tarnas. That's why they are worded this way. But I wanted to ask you the same categories to compare those two videos.
Mhm.
You have written extensively, that's Richard Tarnas, about archetypal cosmology. In what sense are archetypes, that's the question for you, in what sense are archetypes ontologically real? And how does astrology illuminate their relationship to lived experience?
Okay. Well, that's definitely not one for me. But I'm going to reply in the sense that the problem with I have with archetypes. Well, I don't
Yeah,
have a problem with archetypes, the concept and what an archetype is,
yeah.
that stands by itself. But the use of archetypes in astrology gives rise to something that is extremely dangerous for astrology, which is a generalistic view. And if you imply archetypes as your main tool to do astrological interpretation, then you're very close to the slippery slope of anything goes,
Hmm.
because an archetype is vast enough for anything, and most, let's go for the so-called unpopular opinion. I think most of astrological practices relies on generic things that work and resonate with people because, again, they're archetypical, and because they're archetypal, they're going to resonate with anyone because they talk about human experience. That's the case with mythology. you know if you simplify mythology enough, taking out the more complex parts of the story, it's going to resonate with human experience because that's what it was made for. It is made to resonate with human experience. So if you interpret everything archetypically and mythologically, you're going to have a resonance with anyone because it naturally resonates. But that's not astrology. That's not astrological interpretation. And this is where I get sometimes a bit annoyed with the excessive use of this tool,
Okay.
let's say.
How do you distinguish meaningful synchronicity from confirmation bias without reducing either to purely subjective interpretation?
As best as one can.
Should we go to number 6?
Yeah.
Could astrology be understood as a participatory mode of knowing rather than a predictive system? What would such a shift imply for philosophy of science?
Hmm. Well, that goes to the old question, is there fate or not? Are things fated, or do we have free will? It roots on that very complex question. And if you believe in many of the current cosmological views from science itself, most of them are very, very fated, have a very fated view of the universe. Things are going to be as they're going to be, and there's no way of changing it. So it gets complicated. But if you think of human experience, even if things were completely, fated and there's no way around them, we don't know that. So it's going to be a surprise for us. And I think that's, if you thinking about personal growth and human experience, you just have to learn how to deal with things in the best way possible, the best way you can, learn from them, even if that was like it was going to happen like that from the start, but for you it's not. So it's a matter of your consciousness. We don't know what's ahead, even if the path ahead is already fixed. So that's the best we can do. I think it's manage that to our own level of awareness so that we are okay with the experience.
Question number 7. Do you believe the central challenge for astrology today is empirical validation, or is it primarily a crisis of interpretation and worldview?
Hmm. Well, if we come to think of it, astrology was always challenged in any of period in history. There was always people with philosophical or religious views that would not accept that astrology worked. So it's not really a new phenomenon if you think about it. Um, it just have different clothes depending on the period you're talking. So I don't think that's going to change. You know, even if we get to a period where astrology is more accepted or at least explainable scientifically so that it becomes a more valid knowledge, there will always be someone who does not think it's a valid knowledge. So,
Okay, number 8. If astrology is fundamentally symbolic rather than causal, what standards of intellectual rigor should govern its interpretation?
hmm, okay, that brings a problem. Is it symbolical? Is it causal? Is it something else? So we really don't know. We just have thoughts on that. Um, and what does it mean to be symbolic? Can symbolic not mean causal as well, but in a different way? So it's a very complex and difficult to root question, but the rigor is things we if we work about symbols, let's talk about symbols. You know, planets symbolize specific things, signs symbolize specific things, elements symbolize specific things. That's the nature of the astrological language. um, and I think the problem is people tend to take a lot of liberties with that symbolism. And if you are more strict to symbolism, then you have a more rigorous approach. For example, Mars is a symbol of conflict, war, and all things associated with Mars. It will never be a symbol of love or friendship. So you need to be rigorous about it. And there's no way you can place Mars in any kind of chart or situation where Mars is going to represent love or friendship. And if you keep that in mind, you know that these things have their own nature, you get more rigorous.
Okay, so how can astrology avoid becoming merely a projection of psychological narratives while still honoring the symbolic richness of archetypal experience? Now we leave out the archetypal, just
Yeah, yeah.
the richness of experience.
Well, again, I think that's the thing. You know, when an interpretation, astrologer does an interpretation, it is a conjecture. So it's the astrology is trying to equate that kind of configuration into something that exists. And most of the time, life surprises us because things manifest like that, but in a way that you wouldn't think about it. So you need to be correct in a way that you know you understand and you describe correctly the effects of a specific configuration, but not in a way to restrict it too much because you never know. And this is something that's discussed throughout history as well. You know, we never know for sure. We can do an educated conjecture, an educated guess, if we want to do it. Not a guess, but it's a conjecture because it's based on logic. But you never know the exact result. Sometimes you have it and you're spot on, and sometimes you're just a little to the side. And what you want to do is at least a little to the side. You don't want to be completely wrong and utterly wrong. That means that something went wrong with that interpretation. So I think that's the best way to approach it.
Number 10, your intellectual journey bridges philosophy. That's true for yourself, I suppose, too. Your
Uh,
intellectual journey bridges philosophy, psychology, history, and astrology. Which discipline, in your view, currently offers the greatest opportunity for a serious dialogue with astrology, and why?
well, I'm not a philosopher nor a psychologist, so I'll adapt this question to myself. I
Is
think history, definitely.
okay.
History can establish the
Yeah.
best dialogue at this point.
11. How should we understand the remarkable historical correspondences between planetary cycles and cultural transformations without falling into deterministic thinking?
Well,
Well, that corresponds to his book Cosmos and
yeah, I
Psyche, which
know,
of
I
course,
know, I know, I know, I understand. Well, if you accept that astrology works, then you're accepting some level of determinism. Otherwise, why bother?
yeah, yeah, sure.
you know? So you do need to accept some level of determinism in order to work with astrology. You can see it, okay, but there's freedom for movement. Perhaps there is, perhaps there's not. That depends on our philosophical approach. But you need to accept determinism. Otherwise, let's do crochet or something.
Okay. 11. How should we understand the remarkable historical correspondence? No, that
No,
we
that
that,
was
that,
we've
that
seen
we
that one,
now
yeah.
we are 12 now. To
Yeah, yeah.
what extent does astrology challenge the prevailing distinction between objective knowledge and subjective meaning?
Okay. I think astrology is more objective than people think, or at least as people conceive it, because you can be objective within a certain degree of subjectivity. Is again, like I was saying before, you can be objective on what kind of configuration and its probable effects, and then you can be subjective in thinking how that might manifest, you know.
Okay, number 13. Would you argue that astrology reveals something about the structure of reality itself, or primarily about the structure of human consciousness?
Well, I'm going to be pragmatical about this one. It all stems to human perception. So, we're human. We
Okay,
have human perception. So it might be a structure of the cosmos. It might be a derivative from our perception, but that's how we perceive it. So,
okay. 14. How has your engagement with okay,
yeah.
we leave out the archetypal. How has your engagement with astrology changed your understanding of freedom, agency, and moral responsibility? How has your engagement with
Yeah.
astrology
Mhm.
changed your understanding in your life of freedom, agency, and normal and moral responsibility?
Well, I think moral responsibility comes from the person's own nature and beliefs. And how you react to certain circumstances. Freedom and agency, we always have agency regarding to ourselves, even if we don't, we do perceive it as having it, and we do need that perception. Otherwise, why bother? Just let
Yeah.
things happen. So I think what it teaches us is that our agency is connected with something a little larger than us. In a sense, now in the northern hemisphere is summer, it's going to be hot. It's going to be a hot day, so you're not going to wear a coat. Can you choose to wear a coat? Yes, you can. But again, why? If you want to torture yourself with extreme heat, you can. So I think the equation works like this. You cannot change the weather. You cannot change how the natural rhythm things, but you can change how you react to them and how you use them you manage them in a useful way for yourself.
Okay. The next question is here. Many critics argue that astrology lacks falsifiability. Do you think falsifiability is an appropriate criterion for evaluating symbolic systems of knowledge? I think we had this in our talk today. We don't have to go again on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Let's go to 16.
yeah.
Is the current scientific paradigm capable of accommodating astrology? We had that as well. We can skip that.
Yeah, yeah.
We can. If astrology has survived for millennia across vastly different civilizations, what does that historical persistence itself tell us about human cognition and our relationship to the cosmos?
Well, I think it tells us a lot. It tells us that we are embedded in the natural rhythms of existence and of the cosmos, if we want to say it like that. And we have a relationship to it. Astrology is a way of understanding those rhythms and trying to be aware of those rhythms, predicting them if you want to. But that tells us a lot about human nature and the fact that astrology still persists, and you need and people believe in astrology in from the most simple and nonsensical way to the more sophisticated perception of astrology. That is important for the human being, and that's why astrology has survived and has been a transcultural phenomenon throughout history.
18. How do you envision a productive collaboration between practicing astrologers and academic researchers without reducing one perspective to the assumptions of the other?
Academics would have to learn how astrology works.
Which is the demand by Geoffrey Cornelius and Patrick Carey early on.
Yeah, you cannot study something or even go against something that you do not understand in order to let's go a bit Machiavellic here. In order to if you want to destroy something, you have to know it intimately, then you know where the problems are, and academics just don't do that.
Okay. 19. What unanswered philosophical question about astrology do you consider the most important for the next generation of scholars?
Oh, oh, I don't know.
Well, you can say I don't do philosophical questions, then we skip it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's skip that one.
Let's skip that
I
one.
would have to think about it. Yeah.
If you were designing a university curriculum for the study of astrology today, what intellectual traditions and
Do
methodological approaches would be essential? That's more your cup of tea.
Yeah, that's more my cup.
Headmaster of the school.
Well, you need to understand one thing that is very lacking on today's astrological community, which is to understand exactly what are you working with. Because people understand the symbols and go for the archetypes and jump in the bandwagon of mythology, but sometimes they don't even are aware of what are the mathematical principles behind it, what are we observing exactly. So I think a good education on basic observational astronomy and basic calculation would be essential, so that people know what they're talking about without just blurting things. That I've seen people, that use parts and black moons and nodes and stuff like that without not knowing what it is, or are very concerned of a transit of an eclipse on their chart without understanding how an eclipse works and how you can spot immediately on the chart if there's an eclipse there or not. So this is serious, because that's completely removes credibility from any astrological practice. So even if you're very good at interpretation, if you don't know what's the basis of your own symbols, that that creates a big hole in your knowledge. So I think a good education, that would be a good historical perception of how things evolve, and that's something I've been working on for years and years. Understand exactly how things develop, and perhaps instead of having the war of which techniques are best, understand how techniques change through time and develop, and why they develop a certain way and not another. And this is a bit more historical. And then if we want to understand astrology today, we have to understand how it changed into what we see until the 17th century, and then what we see from the late 19th century forwards. What changes that, and is even that astrology, or is it something else? So this would have to be addressed.
On the 12th of August, exactly when I started my talk with Professor Becker-Tarnas about her research project about life and work of Stanislav Grof, the total eclipse happened. How do you interpret eclipses, total eclipses, and what is your approach to the total eclipse category in delineation in astrology? For example, taking my talk with Beccatanas, it was right under the eclipse.
Mhm.
Does that mean anything for the talk or for me or for my life? How does the eclipses affect me, or do they only affect the fall of kings like
I think
Trump gets thrown out of the White House or something like that?
I think they're more of a mundane phenomenon, so they work in a more macro kind of
So
lens.
it's more like throwing out a president out of his office.
I would think so, or
Okay.
creating a political change that will do that. And even
Yeah.
so, you know, you have there are rules for that, and there are very well established rules since antiquity, which most people seem to just put aside for some reason. Eclipses are mainly affect the places where they're seen.
So if I only have 85%, it's less than the 100% where they are seen. Or do you need in the total eclipse area?
You don't need a total eclipse area necessarily, but the eclipse needs to be seen. That's one of the rules. There are
Okay.
timings of effects depending on where in the heavens the eclipse is. If it's close to midday, sunset, sunrise, it will have effects at different times throughout the duration process. There's a duration. Um, it's complex. And I think people simplify things because people see transits and everything's a transit. And it doesn't mean it doesn't take validity of that transit, but it's transit. It's a new moon. So it's not that big of a deal. But for mundane, there's a whole set of very precise rules to interpret eclipses, which people ignore, and even to the point where people are already thinking, oh, this is the effect of the eclipse, and the eclipse hasn't happened yet. And it doesn't work like that. Astrology doesn't work with things having effects before the phenomenon happen. Things have effect after the phenomenon happen. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're saying solar revolution, it's not 6 months before it happens, it only starts when it happens and afterwards.
Yes.
How about solar eclipses? Is that a module in your teaching in your school?
Yes, yes. I have an introduction to mundane astrology course where we discuss that.
How much is that course for people outside of Portugal via Zoom if they participate? This course of mundane astrology.
Well, I don't have it in English yet.
Yet you don't have it in English.
I only
Okay.
have it in
In
Portuguese
Portuguese.
at
So I have
this
to
point.
learn Portuguese before I can watch it. Okay. Um, Back to the new moon in the individual horoscope. How do you, as a traditional astrologer, handle the new moon as a transit factor
Hmm.
to the radix? How do you go along with that?
Well, again, transits are small fish in the whole predictive scheme. So a transit is going to be a trigger for something else that's already happened. And this is something that sometimes people are not aware of. There's a lot of, you have the solar return, you have the directions, you have the profections. There's a lot of movements which are much heavier in terms of effect than a transit. So, can an eclipse trigger something? Yeah, or a new moon trigger something? Yes, but it has to trigger something that's already happening. It's not big enough to create a completely new phenomenon. That's not, it has to reinforce something that's already there.
Are you still in the business of offering delineation private session via Zoom for people all around the world?
Yes.
If you take myself, I'm 76 years old.
Mm.
What would be your recommendation what we could do in a session like that? Some aspects of life are not there anymore. I will not start a new job, obviously. I will finish my YouTube activities in September. After that, you won't get new videos from me. So this is coming to an end, not
Hmm.
starting anew. I will not establish a startup within my age. I could, I could become 120 eating all those supplements all day and vegetarian diet and all that. But
Hmm.
anyways, if you have a client like myself,
Hmm.
it's still 80 euros per hour.
Yes, currently, yes.
Around about 80 euros for 60 minutes. And if I want for 3 hours, that's 100 and to 240 euros for 3 hour session. Do you do 3 hour sessions? Do you do that?
Usually no, usually no, it's too
What's the
long.
long, what do you offer? 120 minutes or 90 minutes?
Well, usually I'm very generous person, so if it goes beyond the allotted 1 hour, if a person's, for example, sometimes people are have a huge problems in their lives and need some kind of support. So if it extends, usually it's another half an hour or so. I'm not going to charge more for that.
Considering the fact that you do mundane astrology, would you do a private session not being published about the geopolitical next 2 years? Could you do that?
I suppose I could. It's not something that I offer, but
Would
yes,
would you offer it to me for a private session? I will not publish it. Would you
yes,
do it?
yeah, if you
So we
want.
could talk about geopolitics for 60 minutes or something like based on your knowledge of mundane astrology. But individually, if you have a client like myself, 76 years old, getting
Hmm.
77 in December, being a Sagittarius and being serious about doing a session,
Hmm.
is there anything you would recommend which is good enough to pay money for? Because I will not ask when do I find my next wife because I have one. I will not ask you what profession should I change to because it's behind.
Hmm.
I do not have questions on the financial future because I'm sort of settled as a civil servant with my pension and
Hmm.
all that. As an astrologer in your school or as a service for the public to delineate something, what comes to mind? What would you say? Okay, for this type of old people, I still have something where I can earn money and they can get some benefit. What would you say for the
Well,
old people? What's the market for the old people?
there's quite a lot because people still have things happening in their lives, relationship with children's, their own emotional or psychological
Well, if
well-being.
that if that's not there, what then?
If
No
there's not,
child, no children, no emotional turbulences. I'm a Neoplatonist. Don't forget that.
yeah,
So I'm sort of content. I don't like to do videos anymore because this is the not the last, but the one before the last. The last video will be on the second on the 2nd of September about the Solar Busca Tarot.
hmm.
Very special topic. So what could you offer me that I should make a contract with you for a session? What would you feel? What could be a good idea? Would you say, let's look at your life, the last 88
You
eight
could.
decades?
You could do that. You could have a further understanding of why things certain things happen or
Okay.
how you are as you are. But usually a person with those with that position usually wouldn't come to an astrological consultation.
Yeah, but
People usually
I
come
was
because they
wondering
need it.
whether I find something to do it with you, because I would like to do something with you privately, not public. We discussed this on our first video
Hmm.
that we don't do that. I would like to do something with you to get an experience of how you do it.
Hmm.
That's my basic motivation. But I don't want it to be contentless without
Hmm.
content. I, if we do it, we should do something which has sense.
Hmm.
But there seems to be a problem to find a sensible topic to do it. Except look at your life backwards eight decades.
Yeah, you can look at your life. You can look at who you are and
Okay.
what motivates you. Yeah, I suppose you have projects and things that you
No,
want
I don't have project.
doing.
I will finish YouTube and then I will read books and play bridge on online, and that will be it. And go to restaurants and go for a walk, and that's it.
Hmm.
I'm a,
You could.
I'm becoming a real pensioner.
Well, most of the consultations when someone doesn't have a proper motivation,
Yes. Should we
what
look at transits?
I would look at the person herself and itself, who's there, and
We go into the radix and look at that.
the
What is what is
radix, look
what
at
is
that.
there, and then we
Yeah,
look at
and
some.
then you look at what's happening.
Okay, we look at predictions,
Yeah,
secondary progressions, the primary
yeah.
directions, and all
If you don't,
that.
yeah, if you don't have a question, we just look at what's happening, and I'll
So it
describe.
would be what is happening in your life
Yeah, exactly. Well,
via astrology,
yeah,
and that is a sensible approach.
yeah, I think so. Yes, that's how
Okay.
I do it when people just come, out of curiosity,
Yeah. Okay.
not,
Okay.
not with any
I was just
particular.
because I want to do that. We talk about that later privately.
Mhm.
Okay. The last question, looking back over your life's work, well, you are not in that age of Richard Harnas, but you're in the middle of it.
Mhm.
Looking at your life's work at the moment, what aspect of astrology do you believe remains most profoundly misunderstood, not only by skeptics, but also by astrologers themselves?
Good question. Um, Let me think about it for a moment.
Hmm, take your time.
I think I'll go back to, there are several things, but I think people sometimes misunderstand how astrology works. And I'm talking about astrologers themselves. I think you need time and experience to really understand how astrology works. Someone who is starting, and I see that in my students, people are very enchanted and also afraid of astrology, and very, very struck by what they can predict and how it might affect their lives. For example, the eclipse was happening, so everyone was panicking about the eclipse and what it would do in their own charts, which is something that I couldn't care less about my own, and that because I know, what how does that affect. So I think people rush too much the understanding of astrology, not only in terms of theoretical ways. The courses are too fast. People, start jump into astrological readings very fast in their studies. I don't say people should jump in, but they have to jump in with the awareness that they really don't have a mature understand of astrology, and that takes time.
How much time do you need going through your school to become a real good astrologer? If you go by Lee Lehman, which is no longer with us,
Mhm.
100,000 charts at least delineated.
Well, I wouldn't go for numbers, but that's difficult to assess.
You said something like 10,000 last time.
Yeah, I would think so, but I don't even know how many charts I've read so far. But it depends on how intense is your practice and study, and that varies from people to people. So
And
I
in
think
your school, how long is the total courses you have to do to become a full diploma student in your school?
it's
Do
2 years.
everything.
Yeah,
Two
2 years.
2 years. Then you have all the modules.
And then you have modules that you do optionally.
Okay,
Um,
what if you do all the modules additionally? How many years? Four?
yeah,
So a complete study with your school is 4 years,
about four
which
years. Yeah.
which is a good basis, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And
It
then
is.
a lot of practice, 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 practice.
And then that
Martial arts of astrology in the sense of Lee Lehman.
yeah, that assumes that you're practicing, and you're practicing with whatever knowledge you have. This is
Yeah.
something I always say to people. You start practicing, you start looking at charts, not necessarily charging money for them if you know very little, but you see, and whatever you can extract from them, you do it, even, and then later on you go again to the chart, you learn more, you can extract more information. And that's an ongoing process. I would think, if you're working intensively with it properly and giving time for things to establish, I would say at least 5 years
Okay.
for you to be a decent astrologer, 10 of intensive practice to be a really good one.
Okay.
And I mean proper intensive practice, because you can have 20 years of astrological practice and you can be a crappy astrologer because your astrology doesn't make any sense. Let's not go there. Well, I'm assuming people are
Well,
studying
we
properly.
had the problem of critical thinking in our first talk, so people can watch it on the 2.5 hour video from the first. A lot of critical thinking deficits in the astrological community. So 5 years education in your school. How many international English-speaking students worldwide do you have at the moment? 10, 100?
No, less. I'm not that famous. Um, I would say around 25, 30
International students.
international
Yeah,
students,
okay.
yes.
Okay, looking at the international history of astrology in the 20th and 21st century, and if you don't have time to think about my next question, what are the most important ones on the first three?
Sorry, can you repeat that so I see if I
If you
can?
take the history of astrology last century, nowadays, 21st century, and have you don't have time to think, you have to be very spontaneous.
Mhm.
Which are the three most important ones? People, astrologers. You don't
Oh, in
have
terms of
you
contributions.
don't do
Okay.
you are not allowed to think. You have to be spontaneous. You
Well, I
think
would, yeah, I'm thinking, but
you
I
shouldn't
would,
think. You should spontaneous. The most important come to mind.
I have to remind the names of people so I don't say them wrong. But I would think the translation processes, and some of these are anonymous people or less known people, so
So
I
Ben
think
Dykes, for example, he's translating.
he's translating,
Charles
yes.
Burnett is translating.
Charles Burnett is translating, and he has done
Yamamoto
wonderful translation.
so
Yamamoto and Charles Burnett,
yeah,
they made the
yeah,
pair for
yeah.
a long time.
And
There's,
Wolfgang Hübner in Germany.
well, I
And
suppose it has an impact. It's not one
yeah,
that I.
well, he was
Yeah,
translating.
he translated in German most of the time, so
Yeah, okay,
I don't
okay,
know German.
okay, okay. So if you take your own discipline, you're a traditional astrologer who doesn't use the outer planets for delineation, right? Still correct.
Yes.
Is there anyone besides you who is as good as you? Reflective and critical thinking guy who knows where his borders are, and he's not inventing things. I have the
Yeah.
feeling there's Sue Ward might be on your level.
Stewart, Martin Ganston are the two
Ma
names that
Martin
pop into my
Ganzen,
mind.
who else? Who else?
Well, I don't know people's practice, and I don't
Okay.
want to judge people
Yeah,
without knowing
okay.
their
Yeah.
practices. I was just telling that to my
Okay, I
students.
ask other ones. Which traditional astrologers would you like to meet and haven't met yet? Anybody comes to mind who you want to have a dialogue, a conversation about your field because he's a traditional as you. Peter Stockinger could be one. I don't
I
know.
well, but these are people which I already have
Yeah,
some
you
sort
have
of
contacts
dialogue
already. Yeah,
with,
yeah, 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 yeah.
so at the
Something.
moment that I'm aware of,
So
there's
you have spoken to those who are interesting for you.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Would I like to speak a little bit more with some of them? Perhaps, but that depends,
Yeah, okay.
on life
If
and
you
availability.
if you have unlimited funds for investing in an astrological project, what would you do?
Translations, historical research,
Okay.
good
That's boring.
astrological research
That's
center. Oh no, it's
boring.
not.
No, I want an, okay, I phrase it otherwise. If you had unlimited resources,
Mm,
billionaire resources,
yeah.
and you are not allowed to invest in translation, what would be
Okay.
your astrological project?
Teaching, a
Teaching,
teaching
okay.
center. Yes.
A teaching center, a university for astrology.
Yeah, let's call it
Well,
that.
we are unlimited funds would be the largest university
Yeah,
in the world. With
yeah,
if you know you could establish a university with more funds than any other university
yeah,
beyond Harvard if you have unlimited funds, and some
yeah.
people have that kind of money.
Yeah, they do. Uh,
Okay,
the money's out there, just not in our hands. But yeah, I would
teaching.
promote teaching, proper
The
teaching,
Astrological University of Lisbon. Or would you change country?
if needed. Yes, I would.
You would probably
What I
go.
would like to do is to establish right now and with funds a course on astrology adequate for universities, not to promote practice, but to promote knowledge, what
Well, that's
astrology is.
competition. That's sort of competition with Sophia Center.
Sort
So,
of, but
so,
Sophia
so
Center is much more broad
yeah,
range
yeah,
in
that's
terms
right.
of goals.
That's right. Any
Yeah.
country in the world where you would prefer to live than Portugal?
At this moment, it's complicated because the world seems to be changing a lot.
Oh yeah, that's true. We come back
Uh,
to our mundane session. I will book a mundane
exactly.
session someday.
So a few years ago, I would say England
Oh,
because
okay,
there's a lot of opportunities there.
okay.
Um, in Europe, Germany would be an idea, but if I
You
spoke
you you
Germany, I would
you
be
you
more
you
inclined.
don't know enough about my country. You wouldn't come here.
Well, that this is the problem nowadays. Every country has
Yeah, we
problems.
have really problem because in my country we have really censorship,
Hmm,
unbelievable censorship. You
hmm.
just look at what they are doing in the public sphere. Okay, my questions are finished. Is there a topic you would like to talk we didn't talk yet?
I think we covered most of it. Yes.
So there's something left. What would you like to talk about? If we only have most of it, there must be something left.
No, I think we're done. I'm thinking of what I'm currently working on.
Yeah.
I've
So
talked
let's get into your research with the grant of the Portuguese government. What is it about?
Is it, well, as I told you before, it's about how cosmology affected, if cosmology, the cosmological changes affected astrology. So I'm approaching this in several topics. One of them is nautical astrology, which is a continuation from my research, because suddenly you have a very large world compared to what you had before, and that's going to affect practices. I've already written about, southern hemisphere practices of astrology in the southern hemisphere and how that challenged not only computation but also interpretation, and how if does a southern hemisphere affect astrology or not. That's a very interesting question that was put early on when people start to colonize the new world, especially southern America. um, and that kind of thing. How is astrology transported, how it is used to predict new territories, to accompany larger journeys of several days. So I'm looking into astrological practices of that period, and I'm again, I'm not so much interested in theory, so not the astrological books; those are known, although some do need to be studied. But mainly the practice. So this William Lilly project has been very enlightening on astrological practices. But I've also have new Portuguese materials that are also very good. Some Spanish materials that are showing how astrology was practiced elsewhere. So this is my view. And I think that in terms of history of astrology and astrological materials for people to use if they want to practice, I think the early modern period has been very underrated in terms of books. People seem to be interested in translating older materials,
Well,
antiquity,
Stefan Heyen
Middle
is on that
Ages.
path. He has a trilogy on 15th, 16th
Yeah, yeah,
century.
and a very good one, a very
Yeah,
good
yeah.
one. Yeah. David Juice has also some things I've been studying, not so much translating, but studying the medieval Latin practice. So I think there's a lot of things to learn also from that, from what is being produced in Europe.
Okay. In that context of your research project, Thomas Kuhn, Scientific Revolution, 1962, based it on the Copernican revolution.
Hmm.
I have a subside. Professor Dr. Robert S. Westman, The Copernican Question,
Hmm.
Prognostication, Skepticism, and Celestial Order. A thick book.
Yep.
I don't know whether I have it here. No, I don't have it here. There's a lot of discussion about that book. Are you familiar with that discussion?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay. Is he right? Is Thomas S. Kuhn falsified?
It's a good idea. It's a very good idea, and there might be a bit misunderstanding of why things are practiced. I think
Well, if you follow Westman, there was no Copernican revolution.
exactly, yeah, because it didn't really, there wasn't really a revolution. Things
Yeah,
didn't change that
yeah,
much,
yeah.
and this
It
is a
took
common
it took 200 years before the heliocentric
exactly,
worldview took
yeah.
place. So basically, Westman is a thick book. You can get it from the library. He was rather convincing when I read it. Did he convince you? Or
Well,
were you on that platform already before him?
yeah, well, he presents. No, I wasn't, but he presents a very good arguments, and I
Okay.
think
So people can go to my talk site and look it up.
yeah, and because the problem is, what is a revolution? When does a
Yeah.
revolution occur? You know, and this idea of scientific revolution has been disputed in the history of science for quite some time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
is there a revolution really, or is it just a slow process of
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
adapting to new ideas? Yeah, this is an interesting question. And the role of astrology in all of that, I think, is people need to ask themselves, scholars need to ask themselves, you know, why are we having all these innovations, you know, in celestial mechanics and computation of planetary movement, etc. And for most part of the history, that's going to be, I would say, 95% for astrological practice. And
Okay.
this has been, now it's being more accepted, but for a long time, people said, okay, yeah, they were studying, you know, the Arabs were studying the correct movements of Venus or Mars. Why? For fun? Well, perhaps. Lack of better things to do. For some, I don't know. But the main goal of that would be astrological practice. Because
Okay.
sometimes people say, oh, it's also calendrical stuff. Yeah, but for calendrical stuff, it's very important. But for calendrical stuff, you study movements of the sun and the moon.
Yeah, okay.
You don't study Venus, Mars, or any other planet. If you're studying that, you know, with very precise measurements, that's all for astrology.
Okay.
There's not much more. And this is a very important thing to include in historical research or even history of astronomy. Because for the most time, they're studying specific things because they need that data for astrology, for prediction of some sort. And now it's being more accepted that this is so, but for a long time, people would just ignore it. Why do they need this? It's
Yeah.
not like us. We like to measure everything, and since I would say the late 18th century, people have done that because they're studying mathematics and physics and astrophysics. But before all of that, it's astrology that's the engine for the development of astronomy and measurement and
Yeah,
instruments,
yeah.
etc. And this is important if you want to understand why they're doing things.
Do you have a favorite Arabic astrologer?
Sorry, a favorite?
Arabic astrologer like Abu Mashar, is that your favorite? Or Imesra or Al-Kindi or Mashallah? Is there a favorite author in astrology in the medieval times of yourself?
Oh, I like Ibn Ezra.
Imesra, so we are on the same page. My
I like
favorite.
Ibn Ezra. I like Ali
And
Ben Rajab as well.
thanks to Shlomo Silaf, we can read it in English.
Yeah, and I also like Ali Ben Rajab as well.
Yeah, that's the basis for for the German astrologer Raphael Gilbrand, who produced the book Klassische Astrologie, which is classical astrology in a German thick book.
Mhm.
Okay, do you do cards? Do you divination by cards? Ever did it?
No.
Never had a tarot deck to do something with it.
Oh, I do. I have a collection because they're nice, but no, I don't practice it. No.
Okay, so I can do some public relation. Okay, I have a project which is here. It's the
Mm.
Solar Busca Tarot as an hermetic initiation by the Solar Busca Tarot. It's all in German,
Mhm.
and there will be two books in German quite soon.
Mhm.
And this is all Solar Busca. And for people who have never seen a Solar Busca deck,
Mm.
where is this thing going down? Here it is. Okay. It's a long homepage. And oh yeah, there are. This is the Triumph 21,
Mhm.
and there's text with it, and all the triumphs. There's a lot of text, which is for people who are interested in the Solar Busca. There is the 20 Nembroto. There's a picture of Nembroto. And
Mm.
if people want to see all the pictures, they can go by this side. This is the Solar Busca.
Mm.
So I think we have come to a nice end. Did you like it?
Yes,
So it
very
was
enjoyable.
the third episode on our channel, and since I don't do any more YouTubes, this will be the final with Luis Ribeiro, and everything else is private delineation sessions for geopolitics, for what is happening, and all that. So thanks, and from the point of the viewers who are still with us, thank you very much that you took the time to do this, and myself, very much obliged. Thank you very much. And I stop the recording, okay? If I can do that.